Anne Boleyn's exact date of birth is uncertain, with historians generally debating between 1501 and 1507. The most widely accepted year is 1501, though some sources suggest 1507. Based on later ambassadorial reports, she was born either at Blickling Hall in Norfolk or at Hever Castle in Kent, both properties belonging to her family. Her father, Thomas Boleyn, was a respected diplomat and courtier, and her mother, Elizabeth Howard, came from one of England's most powerful noble families. Anne's birth into the ambitious and well-connected Boleyn family positioned her for education in European courts and eventual involvement in English royal affairs. In 1513, Anne Boleyn was sent abroad to further her education and courtly experience, a common practice for noble families seeking to elevate their daughter's status. Her father, Thomas Boleyn, secured her a prestigious position in the household of Margaret of Austria, the regent of the Netherlands and daughter of the Holy Roman Emperor, and impressed Margaret with her manners and intellect, leading to her acceptance at the Burgundian court in Mechlin. This experience exposed Anne to Renaissance humanism, politics, and refined courtly behavior at a young age after her time. In the Netherlands, likely in 1514, Anne traveled to France, where she became part of the entourage of Mary Tudor, sister of Henry VIII, who was briefly Queen of France following her marriage to King Louis XII. Though Mary Tudor's marriage was short-lived due to Louis XII's death, Anne remained in France, serving Queen Claude, the wife of Francis I, gaining a deep understanding of French language, culture, and court politics that would later distinguish her at the English court. Between 1514 and 1521, Anne Boleyn remained in France, serving as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Claude, wife of King Francis I during these formative years, and received an exceptional education for a woman of her time, becoming fluent in French and familiar with court etiquette, fashion, music, literature, and religious ideas influenced by the Renaissance and early reformist thought. The French court, known for its sophistication and political intrigue, shaped Anne's intelligence, confidence, and sharp wit, traits that later set her apart at the English court. This period exposed her to influential European figures and ideas that contributed to her strong personality and ambition, which would play a crucial role in her future rise and downfall in England. In 1522, Anne Boleyn returned to England after nearly a decade in Europe. Upon her return, she was appointed as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of King Henry VIII, that same year, and made her first significant appearance at the English court during a grand pageant called the Chateau Vert, where she played the role of Perseverance. Her beauty, education, and sophisticated manners, shaped by her time in the Netherlands and France, quickly attracted attention during this period, and also became romantically involved with Henry Percy, heir to the Earl of Northumberland. Their relationship, however, was forcibly ended, likely due to political pressure from Cardinal Thomas Wolsey and the king, who may have already taken notice of Anne. This event marked the beginning of Anne's complicated relationship with both royal politics and Henry VIII himself. Between 1525 and 1527, Anne Boleyn captured the attention of King Henry VIII. By this time, Anne had established herself at court with her charm, intelligence, and continental sophistication. Unlike many women who succumbed to the king's advances and refused to become his mistress, insisting on marriage, her refusal only deepened Henry's obsession. During these years, Henry began pursuing what became known as the king's great matter, the effort to annul his marriage. To Catherine of Aragon, Henry claimed that his marriage was invalid in the eyes of God because Catherine had previously been married to his late brother, Arthur. In reality, his growing passion for Anne was a major driving force behind his determination to secure Anne. Annulment. Anne's influence over the king began to increase, and she started playing a political role by supporting religious reformers and those critical of papal authority, laying the groundwork for England's eventual break with Rome. Henry VIII's desire to marry Anne Boleyn set England on a collision course with the Catholic Church. Henry formally sought an annulment from his wife, Catherine of Aragon, claiming their marriage was invalid because Catherine had been his brother's widow. The Pope, under pressure from Catherine's nephew, Emperor Charles V, refused to grant the annulment. Meanwhile, Anne Boleyn remained firm in rejecting Henry's advances unless he made her his queen. During this period, Anne's political and personal influence over Henry grew significantly. She supported religious reformers and introduced the king to works questioning papal authority, including texts by William Tyndale. By 1532, Anne was granted the title Marquis of Pembroke in her own right, signaling her rising status. In late 1532, she and Henry traveled to Calais to gain the support of Francis I of France for their union. Their relationship became physical shortly after, with Anne becoming pregnant. In January 1533, they married in secret, despite the lack of papal approval. Anne's pregnancy and their marriage intensified the urgency to resolve the king's marital status, ultimately leading to England's break from the Catholic Church. In September 1532, Anne Boleyn was granted the noble title of Marquis of Pembroke in her own right, an unprecedented honor for a woman who was not yet queen. The ceremony took place at Windsor Castle, with King Henry VIII personally overseeing the proceedings. By granting Anne this title, Henry elevated her status significantly, making her one of the highest-ranking noblewomen in England. The move was politically strategic, as it allowed Anne to hold the title independently of marriage and increased her prestige ahead of their upcoming diplomatic visit to France. During the visit to Calais, Anne was presented to King Francis I, who expressed cautious support for Henry's intentions to marry her. The Marquis of Pembroke title marked a turning point in Anne's rise to power, symbolizing her transition from lady-in-waiting to a woman poised to become queen. On June 1, 1533, Anne Boleyn was crowned Queen of England at Westminster Abbey in a lavish ceremony that marked the peak of her power and influence. Her coronation was unique in that she was the first and only member of the Boleyn family to be crowned queen. The event was carefully staged by Henry VIII to legitimize their marriage and the expected birth of their child. and was visibly pregnant during the ceremony, adding urgency to Henry's desire for public recognition of their union. The coronation procession through London was grand, with elaborate pageants, decorations, and public celebrations, but it also revealed mixed reactions among the people. Many resented Anne, seeing her as the cause of the king's break with the Catholic Church and the humiliation of Catherine of Aragon. Despite the controversy, the coronation established Anne's position as queen and further solidified the political and religious upheaval that accompanied her rise. On September 7, 1533, Anne Boleyn gave birth to her only surviving child, a daughter named Elizabeth, at Greenwich Palace. The birth was a moment of both joy and disappointment for King Henry VIII, who had desperately hoped for a male heir to secure the Tudor dynasty. Although Elizabeth was healthy, her rival failed to satisfy Henry's wish for a son, which created tension in Anne's relationship with the king. Despite this, Elizabeth's birth solidified Anne's status as queen and heir to the throne. The child was declared legitimate, a crucial political move that challenged the claims of Henry's first daughter, Mary, born to Catherine of Aragon. Elizabeth's birth also intensified the religious and political conflict surrounding Henry's marriage annulment and the break with the Catholic Church. Elizabeth would later become one of England's greatest monarchs, but at the time, her birth marked a turning point in Anne's fortunes, as Henry's hope for a male successor remained unfulfilled. Between 1534 and 1536, Anne Boleyn's position as queen began to weaken as she failed to produce a male heir despite several pregnancies. During this period, Henry VIII increasingly grew frustrated and distracted by other women, including Jane Seymour, politically, and continued to support religious reform and encouraged the spread of Protestant ideas. But her influence at court diminished. In 1534, the Act of Supremacy was passed, declaring Henry the supreme head of the Church of England, a move largely motivated by his desire to marry Anne and secure their offspring's legitimacy. However, Anne suffered several miscarriages, which further strained her relationship with the king. By early 1536, her enemies at court, including Thomas Cromwell, saw an opportunity to undermine her. Accusations of adultery, incest, and treason were fabricated against Anne, leading to her arrest in May 1536. This turbulent period marked the rapid decline of Anne's power and set the stage for her tragic downfall. On May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn was executed by beheading at the Tower of London, after being found guilty of adultery, incest, and treason, charges widely believed to have been fabricated. She faced her death with composure and dignity to ensure a swift and less painful death. King Henry VIII arranged for a skilled French swordsman to carry out the execution rather than the traditional axe, and was taken to the scaffold within the Tower grounds, where she delivered a brief speech reaffirming her innocence and faith. Her execution marked the end of her tumultuous and controversial life, leaving a lasting legacy as one of England's most famous and tragic queens. She was buried in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula within the Tower, and Boleyn's legacy is complex and enduring. She played a central role in one of the most significant turning points In English history, the break with the Roman Catholic Church and the establishment of the Church of England. Her marriage to Henry VIII triggered religious and political upheaval that reshaped England's future. Despite her tragic end, Anne is remembered as a symbol of ambition, intelligence, and strong will. Her daughter, Elizabeth I, went on to become one of England's greatest monarchs, leading a golden age of exploration, culture, and relative religious peace. Anne's life and death have inspired countless works of literature, art, and historical study, reflecting both the dangers of court politics and the lasting impact one person can have on history.